I have a bit of a confession to make before we get started today.
Oh boy. All right, let's hear it.
So, I realized recently that I treat my emotional vocabulary a lot like, well, like a junk drawer.
A junk drawer.
Yeah, you know that drawer in your kitchen, the one where you just throw in like dead batteries, rubber bands, some takeout menus from places that closed 3 years ago?
Oh yeah, everybody has one of those. It's total chaos.
Yeah.
But it's a familiar kind of chaos.
Right, exactly. Well, I do that exact same thing with words like forgiveness, grace, mercy, and empathy. I just sort of sweep them all into this big mental pile labeled being nice.
Just lump them all together.
Right. I figure if I'm not actively yelling at you, I must be doing one of those four things. But, and this is why I wanted to do this deep dive today. I was reading through our source material, and I realized that by treating those words as synonyms, I'm actually making my relationships way harder than they need to be.
It's a really common trap, honestly. We treat these incredibly heavy, distinct concepts as just, different flavors of getting along. But mechanically, they're completely different tools.
Completely different.
It's like, to use your junk drawer analogy, trying to tighten a screw with a rubber band.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
It doesn't work. And you usually just end up frustrated.
Which is exactly why I'm so excited to get into this today. We are unpacking a reflective piece by Jimmy Perez. It's titled Grace, Mercy, Forgiveness, and Empathy. And what I love about it is that it's not some dry academic textbook.
No, not at all.
It's more of a meditation. Perez argues that these aren't just dictionary definitions. He actually calls them postures of the heart.
That phrase really stuck with me too, postures of the heart. It implies that these are active stances we take, right? Not just passive feelings that wash over it.
Yes. And so our mission for this deep dive is to do exactly what Perez suggests. We're going to take these four concepts apart, look at how they tick, and figure out why we constantly get them confused.
And I think this is the real kicker, which we'll get to later. Why we actually have to apply them to ourselves before we can even think about offering them to anyone else.
Oh, that is the hardest part.
Easily the hardest part. But Perez actually starts with the absolute foundation, which is language. He says, and I quote, "Without shared meaning, conversation becomes distortion."
That is so true.
Think about it. If I say I forgive you, and what I mean is I'm releasing the debt, but what you hear is I'm saying what you did was okay.
We're going to have a massive problem.
Exactly. The relationship just fractures right there.
So let's build that shared meaning right now for you listening. And Perez actually starts a step back from the big four. He says you can't even begin to play the game without two prerequisites: self-responsibility and accountability.
Right, because you can't have grace without a baseline of reality. Perez defines self-responsibility as the direct opposite of drifting.
Drifting. I love that word choice. It feels like, I don't know, floating down a river without a paddle.
That's exactly the image. Drifting is just being a passive observer in your own life, is walking around saying, things just happen to me.
Right, playing the victim.
Yeah. Self-responsibility is grabbing the paddle. It's acknowledging that we have to respond to life, not just let it wash over us.
And then flowing directly from that is accountability. Now, this is where Perez introduces an analogy that I think it's honestly the MVP of this entire piece.
The financial ledger.
Yes. He strips away all the messy emotions and just frames accountability as a financial transaction.
It's brilliant because it removes the shame. He asks us to just think of accountability as a ledger. If I have harmed you or, say, violated a boundary or broken a promise, I've created a debt.
It's just a mathematical fact.
Just a fact on a page. Accountability is simply looking at the ledger, pointing to that line item and saying, yes, I see that charge. I made that charge. I own this debt.
Which sounds incredibly simple when we say it like that out loud. But in practice, it is excruciating.
Oh, it's terrible.
Because usually when someone points out a debt, we immediately say, yeah, but, right? Yeah, but I only yelled at you because I was tired, or I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't annoyed me first.
Exactly. We offer justifications instead of accountability. We try to explain away the debt. But in this framework, the why doesn't remove the what.
The debt is on the books regardless.
Right. And once you finally accept that the debt exists, that is when the big four come into play. Forgiveness, mercy, grace, and empathy. They're literally just different ways of handling that balance sheet.
Okay, so let's run through them using this financial model because this really cleared it up for me. Let's start with forgiveness. If accountability is admitting the debt exists, what is forgiveness?
Forgiveness is the decision to stop trying to collect, period. It's canceling the repayment plan.
That is such a crucial distinction. It does not mean the debt didn't happen.
No, and this is exactly where people get stuck. They think forgiving means saying, oh, it wasn't a big deal. But no, it might have been a huge deal. The bill might be for $1 million. Forgiveness is simply the creditor saying, I am no longer going to wake up every single morning trying to extract this payment from you.
It's releasing them from that endless punishment cycle.
Yes. And releasing
Yeah.
yourself, too. You don't have to be a full-time debt collector anymore. And Perez is very clear on this, releasing the debt does not mean you have to loan them money again tomorrow.
Yes. Forgiveness is about the past. Trust is about the future.
Precisely. You can completely forgive someone and still decide, hey, you aren't creditworthy and I'm not doing business with you anymore.
Okay, that clears up forgiveness perfectly. Now let's tackle the two that I think are the most commonly confused. Grace and mercy.
Oh yeah, these get swapped all the time.
Constantly. I use them interchangeably. Oh, have some mercy, show a little grace. I just thought they were the same vibe. But in this model, they're practically opposites.
They are opposite sides of the exact same coin. Let's look at mercy first. Going back to our analogy, mercy is not receiving a penalty that you do deserve.
The classic example being the speeding ticket.
It's the perfect example. You were speeding.
Yeah.
You definitely broke the law. The debt is real, and the police officer have every right to write you a huge fine.
That would be justice.
Right. Justice is getting what you earned. But if the officer walks up, hands you your license back, and just says, slow down, have a nice day, that is mercy. The punishment was fully earned, but it was withheld.
Okay, so mercy is avoiding the bad stuff you technically deserve. Then what is grace?
Grace is the injection of the good. Grace is receiving a deposit into your account that you did absolutely not earn.
Okay, like getting a bonus check when you actually missed your sales quota.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or getting a promotion you didn't qualify for.
Oh.
Or let's look at it in a relationship context. Having your partner make you a beautiful breakfast and treat you with incredible kindness the morning after you were really grumpy and difficult with them.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You earn the cold shoulder. That would be justice. If they just acted normal and didn't bring it up, that's mercy. But if they go above and beyond to bless you, that is grace.
I love that breakdown so much. Mercy is, I'm not going to crush you even though I could, and grace is, I'm going to lift you up even though I don't have to.
And Perez points out that while the feeling of receiving them is really similar, that sudden wash of relief and gratitude, the mechanics are totally different. And knowing which one you are offering is vital for the posture of your heart. Are you withholding a blow, or are you offering a hand up?
That completely changes how you see your everyday interactions. But, and here's the pivot in the source material that I think makes this deeply personal.
The inner work.
Yes, Perez doesn't just leave these as fun little tools for how we treat our neighbors. He turns the spotlight all the way around and points it right at the listener. He says real change has to begin with self-responsibility.
And this is usually where people hit a wall. Perez argues very convincingly that you cannot genuinely offer these things, grace, mercy, forgiveness, to others, if you are running a totalitarian regime inside your own head.
He talks about this razor-thin line regarding how we treat ourselves. Can you unpack that? Because I know I've walked that line before, and usually on the wrong side.
It's the line between holding yourself accountable, which is healthy, and condemning yourself without mercy, which is totally destructive.
Right.
We often think that to be truly responsible, we have to just beat ourselves up forever. Like, if I make a mistake, I have to feel awful about it for 10 years. Otherwise, it means I haven't learned my lesson.
Yes. It's like we are trying to pay off our own ledger debt by just making ourselves miserable.
But Perez is saying that isn't accountability. That's just self-flagellation. Accountability just says, I own this action. I see the damage. But once you say that, you have to apply the other tools. You have to forgive yourself. You have to show yourself mercy.
There is a quote in the source attributed to Maya Angelou that Perez uses to anchor this whole idea. Forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it.
It's so profound. It grants you permission to have been imperfect in the past. Because what do we always do? We judge our past selves using our current wisdom.
Oh, constantly. We look back at a decision we made 5 years ago and go, how could I have been so incredibly stupid?
But 5 years ago, you were working with a completely different data set. You're punishing a version of yourself that literally didn't have the tools or the knowledge to do any better.
It's totally illogical when you put it like that.
It is. Perez notes that if you have accountability without forgiveness, you're just living in a torture chamber of your own making. But, and here's the really important warning, if you have forgiveness without accountability,
Then you're just drifting again. It's just, oops, I made a mistake. Oh well, moving on.
Right, you need both. You have to say, I own that mistake, it was mine, and now I release myself from the shame of it so I can actually move forward.
Now, there is another psychological trap Perez mentions here that perfectly explains why we struggle with this so much. It's about how we judge intentions versus actions.
Ah, the fundamental attribution error. This is huge. We tend to judge ourselves by our intentions, our posture of the heart, right? We think, well, I didn't mean to hurt them, so I'm still a good person.
But we judge everyone else by their behavior,
Exactly.
right? Like if I'm late to a meeting, it's because traffic was awful and I was trying my absolute best to get here. My heart was in the right place. But if you are late, it's because you're disorganized and you don't respect my time.
Spot on. And Perez warns us about this. Good intentions alone cannot repair damage. They cannot build trust. Intention without action is completely incomplete.
It's just a thought.
Right. So while we really need to extend grace to ourselves, we also have to recognize that our good intentions don't just give us a free pass on the actual real-world damage we might cause.
Okay, so we've got the definitions down, we've got the self-work figured out, now we move outward. How do we apply this to others? Perez actually brings up the golden rule here. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Which, I feel like that's the foundation of almost every ethical system on the planet.
It is, but the source material actually critiques it.
Yeah, which surprised me.
It's a very valid critique. The Golden Rule is a great starting guide, but Perez argues it's not absolute. Because the problem is, how I wish to be treated might be completely terrifying or unhelpful to you.
He gives a really personal example of this.
He does. He mentions that he personally responds really well to tough love.
Right.
He likes blunt feedback. It sharpens him. If he's messing up, he wants someone to literally get in his face and tell him the hard truth.
So if he's following the golden rule and he sees someone else messing up, his instinct is to get in their face.
Exactly. Because that's what he would want. But if he applies that to someone who is, say, very fragile, or someone who completely shuts down under conflict, he's not helping them at all.
He's crushing them.
He's crushing them. He's treating them how he wants to be treated, but he is completely missing their actual needs.
That is such a good point. Just because I like, high fives and loud public encouragement doesn't mean the person next to me doesn't just want a quiet nod.
Precisely. So Perez introduces what he calls the Platinum Rule.
The Platinum Rule, which is?
Treat others as they wish to be treated.
Wow, okay, that shifts the whole center of gravity.
It does. It moves it from your preferences to their needs, but it requires you to actually pay attention and study the other person.
That sounds way harder.
It is much harder.
Yeah.
The Golden Rule is intuitive. You just look inward. The Platinum Rule requires empathy.
And this leads us to the fourth definition, empathy. How does Perez define it? Because it's not just feeling sorry for someone.
No, and he clarifies something really important right off the bat. Empathy is not agreement.
I think that is so vital in today's world.
It is crucial. I can fully empathize with you without agreeing with your conclusion or endorsing your actions. He defines empathy as the willingness to enter another person's experience without needing to share it.
Without needing to share it. That's the key right there. It's connection for their benefit, not for the observer to feel good about how nice and empathetic they are.
Yes. It's sitting in the dark with someone. It's not running into the room, turning on all the lights, and telling them to cheer up.
Right.
And he notes that unlike the Golden Rule, which feels somewhat natural to most of us, empathy often has to be learned. It didn't come naturally to him at all. He had to really learn how to step outside of his own mental framework.
Okay, so we have these tools now. Accountability, grace, mercy, forgiveness, empathy. But life is messy. And Perez talks about this narrow corridor where these concepts start colliding with each other. This is the part of the deep dive where the rubber really meets the road.
Yes, the paradox of compassion.
Yeah. He poses these really tough questions. Can you forgive someone while still holding them accountable? Can you have empathy but completely refuse to enable them?
And the answer to both is yes, but it is deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He uses a specific, very difficult scenario to illustrate this, the beggar scenario.
Right.
He describes encountering a person on the street with no money for food. Perhaps they're in that situation due to severe addiction or a long series of poor choices.
And this is where all those definitions we just talked about start fighting each other inside your head.
They really do. Empathy looks at that person and genuinely feels concern for their suffering. You feel their pain. Forgiveness releases any resentment or judgment you might hold against them for being in that state, but then comes the conflict.
Do you extend mercy and grace?
Right. Do you hand over the money?
And the easy answer, the one that makes us feel like good people, is yes, of course. Help them. Give them the money.
But Perez pauses there.
He hits the brakes hard. He asks the really difficult question. Would helping them relieve suffering or perpetuate it?
Wow.
If the suffering is the direct result of choices that are actively destroying them, is giving them what they want actually an act of love? Or is it just enabling the destruction?
It's the idea that sometimes withholding assistance is actually the act of deeper compassion. Exactly. It's allowing the harsh law of cause and effect to teach a lesson that comfort never could. Perez suggests that grace isn't just blind giving. Grace requires deep discernment. You have to stop and ask if your kindness is actually helpful to them, and it's just making you feel better while keeping them stuck in a cycle.
That is the hard truth of this whole deep dive. Real love, it isn't always soft. Sometimes it's stepping back.
And that leads to a really fascinating reflection Perez shares about his own life. He says, and this is a quote, "I often wonder who I would have become if every person who held me accountable had instead shielded me with mercy."
Man, that stopped me in my tracks when I read it. Because we always want mercy, right?
Not always.
We always want to get out of trouble. We want the teacher to not fail us when we didn't study. We want the boss to not fire us when we mess up. But Perez is asking, if we always got a free pass, would we ever actually grow?
He says, some dots can never be connected in reverse because they were never drawn that way in the first place. What he means is, if he hadn't faced the actual painful consequences of his actions, he simply wouldn't be the strong person he is today.
It raises a big question about the role of conscience versus consequences. Perez wonders if our conscience alone is enough to teach us.
It's a great philosophical question. Can we learn just by listening to that quiet inner voice, or do we fundamentally need to hit a brick wall sometimes?
Right.
He suggests that sometimes the inner voice, the conscience, can cut sharper than any human punishment ever could. But very often, we need the external consequence to actually wake that conscience up in the first place.
It really seems like he's saying that the people who held his feet to the fire, who didn't give him the mercy he was begging for in the moment, were actually the ones who loved him the most. They loved him enough to let him grow.
That is the ultimate definition of tough love. It's valuing the other person's long-term growth over your own short-term comfort in the relationship. Because, let's be honest, it's really easy to be the nice guy who gives the handout.
Sure, everybody likes that guy.
It is incredibly hard to look at someone you care about and say, I love you way too much to help you destroy yourself.
And if we bring this all the way back to the inner work we talked about earlier, it circles back to how we view our own personal history.
Right. If we can look at our own past failures and see them as necessary stepping stones, if we can forgive ourselves for needing those really hard lessons, then we can look at other people who are currently failing with a totally different kind of gaze.
We don't see them as hopeless.
Exactly. We see them as simply in process.
Yeah.
Just like we were. Just like we still are.
It all comes back to the posture of the heart.
Always.
Well, let's bring this home for the listener. We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by realizing that the big four, grace, mercy, forgiveness, and empathy, are distinct tools, not just synonyms for being a nice person.
Right. We define the mathematical debt of accountability. We looked at forgiveness as the act of canceling that debt, tearing up the IOU. We distinguished the unearned bonus of grace from the withheld penalty of mercy.
We talked about the platinum rule, treating people how they need to be treated, and we grappled with that difficult paradox, understanding that sometimes saying no is the most empathetic, graceful choice you can make.
And through it all, the central thesis really stands. You have to start with yourself. You have to forgive yourself for what you didn't know yesterday. You have to extend empathy to your own imperfect humanity first.
Because if you can't do it for you, you're just faking it for everyone else.
Precisely. Perez ends with this beautiful idea that true love and compassion flow from a transformed heart. It's not about doing good deeds so people clap for you. It's about becoming the kind of person where these things, grace, mercy, empathy, just flow out of you naturally.
And he leaves us with a really provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up. It's about how we view the people who actively wrong us. You know, the enemies, the annoyances, the terrible drivers.
Yes. He asks this amazing question. Can another person's wrongdoing actually be our opportunity to grow spiritually?
Wow.
When someone treats us badly, it actively forces us to confront our own sense of justice, our own capacity for compassion, and our own responsibility.
I love that reframe so much. Instead of just being a helpless victim of their bad behavior actually becomes the gym where we exercise our character.
That's a powerful image. Think of it like the difficult person is your spotter at the gym. They are adding weight to the bar so you can get stronger. Without that resistance, the muscles of grace and mercy would just atrophy. They'd never develop.
That is deeply annoying, but incredibly true.
It is annoying.
I'm really going to try to remember that the next time someone cuts me off in traffic. They aren't just a jerk, they're my personal trainer for patience.
Let's hope we both can remember that in a moment.
So, for you listening right now, here is your challenge for the day. Don't try to go out and fix the whole world. Just look in the mirror. Think about the big four: grace, mercy, forgiveness, empathy. Which one of those are you withholding from yourself right now? Maybe just start there.
Because once you finally unlock it for yourself, it changes absolutely everything else.
Thanks for diving in with us today. We'll see you next time.
Take care.